Welcome to WeekCap, everyone. Another edition with your great hosts, the wonderful Greer, Webb, and Clay D, the one and only. How you doing this week, Greer?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Made it through another week, and good to see you and be with all of our friends here on the show.
Absolutely. So we're gonna get right down. We're gonna get right down to it. So, whew, we're gonna go into the NCAA tournament, the men's and women's. So, did you see any of the games last night, man? I know the Tar Heels ain't in, but that rival of yours is looking pretty good right now. Duke. You know,
Duke is looking pretty good. Duke is looking pretty good. I got a little busy this week in Signal, so I didn't see everything, but I did watch a little bit of the games last night and a little bit of the games, I guess, was that Thursday as well.
yeah.
And I'll mix a little bit of men's and women's here. I know UNC is officially out of both. The UNC women lost to the Duke women yesterday. Of course, the UNC men have been out of it. The NC State women also lost yesterday to LSU. But the Duke men are rolling. I caught a recap of the Purdue Houston game on the men's side. Houston won on a buzzer beater last night. Auburn won. They came back down here in Atlanta to beat Michigan. And
Mhm.
so I'm looking forward to continuing to watch both tournaments because I think both men's and women's basketball is interesting and deserving of support. And so I am upset that UNC is out now officially on both the men's and the women's side. But I guess it's good to see a North Carolina team in Duke moving forward. What are your thoughts on what we saw this week?
This is what I love about you, Greg. You're classy no matter what. Classy
I try, man. I try.
because most Star Heel fans, they're like, nah, I ain't cool for them. Nah, like they ain't having that.
What goes around comes around. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't even know. Were you pulling for NC State last year at all in
I was only because my brother is now there, and
Oh, I
NC
see.
State is not really our rival anyway.
Yeah, you can't be a rival if you're always beating them up. So.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And we're gonna get right on to the women's. So we're gonna talk about the young lady, Miss JuJu Watkins. She had a season-ending injury. She suffered an ACL tear during their recent game and such, and that ended her season prematurely. So despite losing their key player, USC remains focused on their goal of winning their first natty since '84. So Watkins had been instrumental in USC's recent success, including a Big Ten title and a number one seed in this year's tournament. Just what do you feel? What's your reaction on the JuJu Watkins injury?
I mean, very sad, right? And frustrating. I saw they had a an electronic poster up at the University of Southern California yesterday, just showing that they're still supporting her, still supporting the team, and I just hate to see it because she's such a star player. Um, There was a tweet, I think maybe on Instagram as well, that went viral earlier this week of Jaden Daniels from the Washington Commanders, sitting beside her, I believe, and just all of the stars that she's able to gather because of her stardom, because of her strong play and her great personality. And so this was very sad to see as a basketball fan, as a sports fan in general. And so I hope she's able to recover quickly. And we'll see what USC does. I mean, they're still in the tournament, I believe. So we'll see how they rebound without her.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. JuJu Watkins was my favorite player this season to both watch and follow. I caught quite a bit of their games on Peacock this year because obviously they have a Big Ten media contract, and I'm
Right.
looking forward to really watch it because we don't have an Angel Reese or a Caitlin Clark this year in this year's tournament. So that was some much needed much needed star power that we need. I'm still going to support the women's games, and I hope USC wins in spite of her. But I hope she comes back. But it's looking like she had the same knee injury that I had, which took me out. But I recovered from that injury in a few months' time. Thank the good Lord for that. So it's when that
Right.
ACL goes, it goes. It happened with my right knee there, and it happened when I was working out, so lifting weights and such. So
Preparing for the NBA.
yeah, but yeah, man, we ain't
It's
gonna
no
go.
joke, right? It's no
Yeah.
joke.
Woo.
But
Mhm.
if you put in the work, what I hear is that if you put in the work and do that physical therapy, you are able to recover in a few months. But
Oh yeah.
still, um, it can hurt. It can be mentally frustrating and challenging. She's pretty young. I don't know how young you were when you tore yours, but she's pretty young, and so just to have that be a season-ending injury, but also to be something that she's probably going to have to deal with or at least consider for the rest of her life, not fun.
Yeah, well, I didn't feel my I felt I heard a pop. You felt it. I felt a lingering sensation, but you really don't feel it until afterwards. Because I was still trying to hobble, induce. I was still trying to hobble and say, "Oh yeah, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good." And then later on,
Wow.
like I felt like a big old fire. I felt like my knee was on fire. Like a flamethrower hit it, and I had to go to the hospital because they. And then they said, "Bruh, your knee shattered. Like your knees,
Wow.
like you gonna be out for 6 months." I'm like, no, I had
Wow. Wow. Wow.
crutches. It
I
was
mean, I've actually heard that. I've actually heard that a lot of people don't feel it right when it happens, or even after the fact, right? That specific area, they may not feel it, but later on, to your point, it starts to affect other parts of the body, and it's worth, addressing. But I have heard that a lot of people don't even know that they tore it, or they don't think it's that serious at first.
yeah, but we're gonna move on because that's just gonna bring up a memory. But I wish Miss Juju well and hope she comes back bigger and better. Speaking of college, speaking of the ACC, University of Maryland. It's going to have Kermit the Frog deliver its commencement address. Now, Greer, you recently graduated a couple years ago. Could you have ever have imagined an iconic figure like Kermit the Frog giving your UNC address wearing the Tar Heel?
No, no, I really couldn't, Clay. I saw this story the other day and I was just shocked. I mean, I guess I kind of want to go. What is that going to be like? Um,
Live
it,
stream it.
yeah, I guess I could live stream it. That is so interesting. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if they have some partnership up there at the University of Maryland with Kermit the Frog or with that brand, but I don't know. I guess we would have to talk to some current students there at U of M to really figure that out.
So,
My commencement speaker was Brian Stevenson, the author of Just Mercy, which
yeah,
was turned into a movie. And then the year before that was kind of a COVID year. And so they actually had some really big names on, I think, virtually, like Dr. Fauci was one of the speakers. And then this year, I believe UNC is having Mia Hamm, the star soccer player,
yeah, she's
as their
familiar.
commencement speaker. So
Yeah.
I think I personally would take any of those over Kermit the Frog, but I don't know.
Yeah. So actually, this honors the legacy of Jim Henson, who graduated from there in 1960 and created Kermit the Frog out of household items like a tennis ball and a scarf. So yeah, that's some real time fact checking there.
Okay, so that's the connection, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Rainbow Connection. That's a song from Kermit the Frog, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna move on. And so we're going to talk about our favorite guy. I say that sarcastically, Trump. So the Trump administration, there is a signal chat controversy. So the Atlantic published a leaked signal messages from a Trump admin group chat discussing military operations in Yemen. So while officials claim no classified info was shared, critics argue that the text reveals sensitive data about U.S. airstrikes. The leak raises questions about communication security and accountability during Trump's presidency. But I don't think you can put accountability in his name same sentence. First off,
No, absolutely
yeah.
not.
But Greer, just fire off. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, no pun intended, right, with the fire off. I don't understand what is going on. I really don't know why we're talking about military operations and plans, whether or not they're technically classified. I mean, I put that on Facebook earlier this week. Whether or not it was actually classified, it was still sensitive information that should not have been shared via Signal. I've used Signal before. They say it's private, they say it's encrypted, but we all know people that have any sort of common sense that the government, and not just the government, but our adversaries can track almost every app that we put on our phones, and they can go in and find this information. I've seen it in court cases with defendants who thought they were speaking in private chat groups, and I've seen it now at the highest levels where the government thought that, they were just talking among themselves, and there was the Atlantic reporter in there, or editor in chief, actually, Jeffrey Goldberg, which is just nuts. And so I think he did his patriotic and civic duty of telling us what happened and not just staying in there. I know some people were saying, "Oh, I would have stayed in there to the end and tried to get all the information I could." But I think he went about it the right way, and we've seen some of the responses from these national security officials, Tulsi Gabbard, director of the CIA, Ratcliffe, and some of these other folks in Congress at these hearings, and their responses have been terrible. I mean, they asked Director Ratcliffe, "Do you think this was a mistake at all?" And he just said, "No." That was his answer, one word, no. Then Tulsi Gabbard was saying she can't remember where she was when these chats were sent. She can't remember much about the chats at all. And then Pete Hegseth, nobody's heard from him, and yet he's seemed to be the main one that was okay with using these signal chats as a means of communicating private or sensitive or maybe classified information. So I think it is totally unacceptable and inappropriate. I think he needs to be fired. I think a lot of these folks need to either resign or be fired or demoted. And they need to learn a lesson because this is not okay. This could have gone bad and could have really injured, maybe even caused the death of some of our U.S. servicemen and women. It could have harmed our allies overseas. It just was not a great situation, and it was one that could have been prevented and avoided. So those are some of my thoughts. But what do you think about this situation?
Yeah, so my thoughts, I'm gonna echo Hillary Clinton's. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Like, really? My whole thing is this. I can't be disappointed when I had no expectations to begin with. So if I expected, if as I said from the get-go, if you elect clowns or hire clowns, expect a circus. So we are right now witnessing a circus. And Hillary Clinton wrote an op-ed out, and it was either in the New York Times or Washington Post. Basically, I didn't even need to read it because I already know what she was going to say, but y'all were getting on me for an email server when she was running for president in the 2016 campaign. So my whole thing is this: hold the same standard for yourself as you would for somebody else. As simple as that. If he had any dignity or any integrity, they know what to do. Step down or at least apologize, which ain't even been done. Bearman
Right,
ain't even apologize. Which
right,
really not to resign and stand your ground, but at least apologize. That ain't
sure,
happened. Moving on.
exactly.
So this is some news coming out of Florida. I don't know if you came across this week, but there is a Florida child labor law controversy. So Florida lawmakers proposed a bill to ease child labor restrictions as part of an effort to address labor shortages following immigration crackdowns. Critics argue this could exploit minors and undermine labor protections, sparking debate over ethical employment practices amid workforce challenges. I don't know if you come across that, Greer, but if you have or you haven't, just what are your thoughts or reactions regarding that?
Sure, I did see that earlier this week, and I was actually coming out of one of my law school classes. I think it's ridiculous. It's this push to fill these positions and to keep uh, the wealthy wealthy and poor folks poor, because what they're doing, and I believe in reading or hearing your synopsis, that what's happening is there are a lot of these attacks or crackdowns on immigration, right, and particularly illegal immigration. However, a lot of the undocumented immigrants in our country work these jobs. I think we've discussed this before on the show. These quote unquote dirty jobs that average American citizens or residents would not want to complete. And so what they're doing is they're lowering the child labor age. And so therefore, kids can work these jobs that these adults, these American adults, do not want to work. I think it's ridiculous. I think the way that we treat immigration and talk about immigration in the system needs to be overhauled. I don't think that putting younger kids into some of these sometimes dangerous jobs and working conditions is appropriate. I just don't think that's the right remedy. And so when we talk about what Florida is doing and what Ron DeSantis is doing, I think they have a little bit of what I call uh, crazy syndrome or like little stepbrother syndrome, because Ron DeSantis is not really accepted by the MAGA folks, and Trump kind of disposed of him in the last primary. And so he's doing some of these things to almost appeal to them, but also show that he has his own independent way of thinking about these issues. And I just don't think this is going to go over well. Again, I don't think it's appropriate. And I think it's going to put some people at risk where the whole time we could have just been doing a little bit more. We could have done a better job at tackling this issue of immigration, but we know the most recent iteration of that involved Trump tanking this deal in Congress. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, so my thoughts are this. It's a slippery slope. We have child labor laws for a reason because we have kids working in sweatshops and jumping out of buildings and such. I don't want to go over the gross history of that, but I could see easily a conservative making the argument that, hey, there's some kids, some poor black or brown kids who gotta support a family, and this will help them support their family. The reality is this: if you would have a living wage or a thriving wage, I'm gonna use that term now, you wouldn't need this. Bingo. As simple as that.
That's
You
a great
have
point.
a living or a thriving wage, or you don't have a situation to where inflation's up for wages remain stagnant. You don't raise a minimum wage, and you have CEOs getting 1,000% increase over the past 40 years, then you won't need to ease child labor laws. I just go I make it simple as that. But they'll use a hardworking kid who's got to support a family in the underprivileged area as a prop to
Right,
promote this.
right.
And here's the thing: they ain't doing it because they want to. They doing it because they have to. We have to
Mm,
remember that.
preach.
Ain't no kid be working at McDonald's for no 40, 80 hours because he wants to.
Right,
That's just the God's honest truth.
right.
And that affects their education. Luckily we do have online courses now these days, but that'd be like you, Greer, having to not go to law school so you could support you and yours over 40, 80 hours a week at in the medium position. That's the equivalent of that. And thankfully,
Mm,
we have resources to get community support where that doesn't happen to happen. But easing a child labor law ain't going to cure that. It's going to make the situation worse.
right.
That's all. I can rant on about that, but I ain't going to. Just the easiest way to solve the problem is raise your wages. Simple as that. Whether it's on
Uh,
the private sector side or it's on the governmental side, raise the wages. Boom.
I think that's a great point, and I wasn't even thinking about that honestly, but you've mentioned that a few times on this show, and I'm in total agreement that some sort of universal basic income or some sort of, I like what you called it there, thriving wage, these ideas that came from the civil rights movement, and some even before, that's what we need to implement here. And it's not welfare, right? It's looking out for each other, because we live in a country which is therefore a community. But I won't dwell on that. I agree with you. That would really help there in Florida and around the country for these folks to have some sort of financial security, especially as people throw this R word around. And by that, I mean recession. How can we make sure that the most marginalized are supported and they don't have to go work dangerous jobs? I mean, that shouldn't be what we devolve to as a country. Oh, you're poor. You can go do this job. I know it's a little dangerous, but you have to do it. Come on. These are kids we're talking about in this particular case with Florida. And so they didn't choose necessarily their parents, they didn't choose their environment, they didn't necessarily choose where to live, probably. And so, why are we putting all of this pressure on them to work these jobs that undocumented folks have been working, right? And have gotten used to working. And maybe, I mean, they're still dangerous jobs, but now that we're deporting people left and right, hardly checking their status, now we have a gap and we have places where we need to fill with people because we still want our fruits, we still want our vegetables, we still want all of this stuff that, again, allows people of privilege to live easygoing lives. So I just wanted to uplift your solution there. I agree.
Yeah, I'm definitely for a universal basic income. I know it's radical, but it just makes common sense, and it could be done by ways for the private sector and such. But I could do a whole white paper on that later. But speaking of jobs, the Department of Health uh, and Health and Human Services announced a reduction of 20,000 jobs as part of a major restructuring. This includes 10,000 voluntary departures and 10,000 layoffs, reducing the workforce from 82K to 62K. The reorganization consolidates 28 divisions into 15 and aims to save $1.8 billion annually by focusing on chronic illness prevention and public health priorities like clean water and safe food. I'm gonna start this one off. I mean, look, I believe it when I see it. Every time I hear job cuts going around, I always hear the terms for innovation. We're going to focus on X, Y, Z. I don't believe anything that comes out of this administration's mouth until I see actual fruits. So therefore, that's my position on it. I mean, look, we already know there's going to be casualties with this administration when it took office on January the 20th. So not surprised, but look, I'm don't sell me on any bull jive that this is all to prioritize clean water and safe food when you're going to also make cuts with the Department of Agriculture and other and the EPA if you want to talk about clean water. And yeah, and probably try to prioritize both most health departments and throughout the states. So yeah, that's my feeling on that. Yours?
Yeah, I just agree. All of these cuts and the way in which the federal government is going about this is is troubling, and I just don't know if people are understanding it. I know you gave a bit of a foundation. You laid a foundation there, but specifically something that I heard on the news when it comes to some of these cuts. Of course, we got USAID and the way the courts have stepped in and are trying to reverse that. But the Department of Education, right, where Linda McMahon went on CNN, that's the current secretary of the Department of Education, and she actually did a decent job. So what she was saying sounded nice, but in effect, it's going to harm again marginalized people. But really, a lot of people, including white people at the state level. It was this more states' rights argument, right? We're giving the federal government or the federal government Congress is giving these departments money, and then they're kind of trickling it down to the states, and sometimes they're putting so not to be too much of a nerd, but you have what are called block grants, where I think you just give the
Bring
money
it
to the
all you want.
state. Block grants where you just give the money to the state and they can use it how they please. And then you give money to the states, but there are certain strings attached to make sure that disabled students are considered, to make sure that teachers are paid, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of these conservative folks these days are saying that because test scores haven't increased, and of course COVID played into that, and because there's such variation in how states do their education, federal government should not just be giving money to the states anymore, and we should give more power to the states to direct their education. However, what they're not seeming to understand is that currently, with federal support, we still see a lot of these red states doing terribly when it comes to education. Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, even though there's New Orleans there. But it's just Arkansas. It's kind of crazy to think that if we give the power to the states, that's going to fix everything. Especially when we have cases like Leandro there in North Carolina that says that all students are entitled to a sound basic education. We still haven't gotten that right. We still don't have teacher pay right in North Carolina. We don't have master's pay currently, which means teachers who start off with a master's degree and then teachers who start off with just a bachelor's are getting paid the same in North Carolina. We used to have it. The North Carolina legislature took it away. So when we don't have these federal supports in place, and when we even talk about international aid, and when we talk about these EPA, and when we talk about other departments at the federal level that help Americans and help Americans abroad, for example, and help our allies abroad, to just cut and say we'll figure it out later, or we're going to let Elon Musk figure all this crap out when he has no expertise when it comes to international aid, in my research, or when it comes to education, really, or when it comes to the environment. I mean, I know he has an electric car business, but that doesn't mean that he's an environmental expert and he knows how to run an environmental department. I mean, he might know how to run a business, he might know how to make money at a business, but that, and this is really where I'll conclude, that is this conservative argument. I don't even want to call it conservative. That's the Elon Musk and the Musketeer argument right now, which is that the federal government is a business, and so it needs to operate more efficiently. The government of the United States of America should not operate as a business. Why? Because it's a government. Literally, the government is to protect people from big businesses who swoop in and take advantage of the little guy, whose sole goal is to make money. The government's goal is to protect people and allow them or ensure that they have a healthy, like you said earlier, a life where they're able to thrive. And so to keep saying the government is a business, we've got to address and attack that argument because when people hear, oh, the government is a business and it's inefficient, they start to agree. So we've got to keep pushing back and saying the government is not a business. There are many businesses that do good things in this country and around the world, but governments should be by the people and for the people, and they should be protecting people and ensuring that folks are kept safe and have the opportunity to live, healthy lives. And so all of these cuts at the federal level, all of these shenanigans that Trump and Musk are pulling, I don't think they're helping the average American, and the government is not a business. So I just want to make that clear here, because I think a lot of people are getting played by the okey doke, to use a phrase that President Obama once used.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Elon Musk sells X, aka Twitter, to AI, to XAI. So he had sold obviously that platform to his artificial intelligence company XAI in a $33 billion stock deal. So he plans to integrate this advanced AI capabilities with X users base to create smarter experiences. This merger values the combined entity at 80 billion and includes XAI's flagship chatbot Grok, which is already integrated in X for premium users. My thought on that is, look, that just cesspool for more mis and disinformation to happen in that regard. But unless you want to add something, I'm going to move on from Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, we can move on. The only thing I would say is I don't know if I saw that necessarily, but I did. I mean, I'm still on Twitter because I refuse to call it X. And the way that AI is just so integrated into everything these days, I think it should give us pause. As I've said on the show before, I think AI has its perks, but when we're giving over control to AI, when we're not all the way clear on its biases and its shortcomings, I think it is cause for concern. So that's all I would add.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's circle back over to more on a lighter notes and such. Have you caught wind of the Stephen A. LeBron James feud at all, Greer?
I have, because I'm a huge LeBron James fan, and I'm becoming less and less of a Stephen A. Smith fan.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how this is materialized and ballooned into much more of a saga than it actually has. The thing about it is that this all started from when LeBron apparently approached Stephen A. and basically said, "Don't talk about my son," and he basically let that go. And Stephen A. talked about it on his podcast shows, and then LeBron went on the Pat McAfee show to talk about it in more detail and such. And yeah, so now it's gone on to a social media beef. They keep going at it in different posts, and Stephen A keeps talking about it and such. And there's a lot of personal attacks between the two. We're getting that instead of just pure basketball analysis. So there's even one Fox Sports outlet that suggested that that's the reason why the Lakers are losing because LeBron is focused as Stephen A. Smith on his mind. I don't.
That's crazy.
I won't go that far. I mean, he's a professional for more than 20 years in the league. I don't think this little pig is slowing him down. It's just
Right.
more so a back to back back-to-back nights without resting. I saw they got beat by a buzzer beater by the Bulls the other night.
Yes.
Dramatic fashion, and yeah, it's the
But
end.
look, the night before that, or 2 nights before that, LeBron had a buzzer beater
He
where he
did.
tipped it
And
in at
I
the
was
last
trying to think
second.
of that, but I couldn't put the form the words there. But yeah, he did. I had the Lakers after the Luka deal going far. I'm kind of skeptical about that now. I mean, we still got some games to play before the playoffs, and if they're not careful, there'll be a playing game team once again, and that's usually the reason why they don't get too far because that's extra games on the body. You know, the playing tournament will can just wear you out. I don't like the
Right.
play format personally. I think it served its purpose because of COVID and all of that when the season was cut short and you had to catch up on time. But I don't think there's a need for the playing tournament now. I think it's kind of there's a redundancy to it, and I don't think it's good for vets like LeBron. That's just
Yeah,
my opinion.
I agree. Going back to the Stephen A. Smith and LeBron feud first. Yeah, every dad is going to be protective of their son. Stephen A is loud and boisterous. LeBron kind of keeps to himself, right? I think he recently spoke out about his relationship with Michael Jordan, but he doesn't chime in much on these big feuds or arguments or debates, whatever you want to call them. And so for him to, confront Stephen A. Smith or just address Stephen A. Smith in this way, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take LeBron James' side because Stephen A. Smith has always been, he's a great commentator, but he's always been one to stir the pot and to be, just animated and hyped. And so for him to say, I think he went as far as to say, like, he would punch LeBron if LeBron touched him or something. That would be the end of Stephen A. Smith as we know him. I mean, come on, LeBron James is huge, right? He's a tree. He's a great basketball player. He's somebody who loves his family, doesn't play about his family. And so, whatever your thoughts are on LeBron and Bronny, I just don't think it's appropriate. Talk about the person's skill, but there's no need to take it any further than that. Now, getting to the play-in tournament, I agree with your thoughts there. LeBron James might be a little tired, right? He's older. This Luka deal, I think it was a good deal. It gives him another asset. But I do think when it comes to that play-in tournament, which is coming up, I think April 15th through the 18th, it's going to tire some of the folks out, some of the players out. And so we'll see. I love watching NBA playoffs. I don't really watch during the regular season, as we've talked about on the show, because I don't think it's super interesting anymore. A lot of these games don't even get good until the fourth quarter. And so, yes, my question would be with this play-in tournament coming up, what does that look like in terms of tiring out some of the players? And do we know who's going to be in it yet, Clay?
So far it's looking like the Bulls, and I'm just saying like the Bulls and Magic, and such. That's how it is if things hold serve as of today.
Okay.
Obviously, things can change out over the next couple of weeks, so yeah, it's not the
Right.
way it looks now. Just like in any sport, like the way the playoff picture looks today could look completely different a couple of weeks from now. So that's just something to keep
Totally.
in mind. But yeah,
Yes, but
I
we'll
don't
see
think
who's in it.
the
But
Lakers
yeah.
should not be in it, because if they are, they can forget their title hopes. It's just no way you're going to sustain that and then go through a few more 7 game series with LeBron at age 40. It's just not going to happen unless you get a higher seed and for home court advantage and all that. So yeah.
Right.
Anyway, we're gonna wrap this up here because I know you have a hard stop. So I don't know if you follow, I'm sure you do because we're all on our phones, but Pop the Balloon, it's the viral YouTube dating show. Pop the Balloon to Find Love. It's being reimagined as a weekly Netflix series that's going to start on April the 10th, hosted by Insecure actress Yvonne Orji, known as a character Molly. There, if you watch follow that show. But yeah, the show retains its original chaotic premise. Contestants pop balloons to signal rejection or keep them intact to explore chemistry. So the Netflix version promises higher stakes celebrity appearances and real-time eliminations, expanding on the series' success of over 100 million views on YouTube. We rarely ever go into the page 6 salacious side of things because that's what other platforms do. I only bring it up in this case that I think if we're gonna see more deals like this, these YouTube shows, like we're a YouTube show too, I would personally would like to see more educational or informative content get a Netflix deal as opposed to a gossipy page 6 sensationalized dating show. I know we rarely touch on dating topics on the show, even in private conversations, Greer, but what are your thoughts on this whole pop the balloon thing in general?
Yeah, I'm happy to share my thoughts. I think I've seen some of the Pop the Balloon, the mini skits on TikTok, and they're funny. They can be entertaining, but again, um, jumping to Netflix is a bit wild. A, B, Yvonne Orji is great. I don't have any issues with her that I can think of. However, I've seen a lot of commentary that the host of the YouTube show, or we see her on TikTok, should be the host of this show on Netflix. Why are we switching up the host just to put a bigger name on it? So I think it's going to be a flop personally. I do think it's going to be interesting for a while. People might talk about some of the relationships or the interactions, but it is so finite, right? You meet this person one time. What is their energy? Pop the balloon. Don't pop the balloon. Flirt with them a little bit. Talk about how they look. I mean, come on, we're better than that.
Yeah.
And I think at least a lot of the shows that I've seen, this is for the Black community, or the shows are tailored toward racial minorities. I just don't think that's what we need to be showing. You can have fun other ways. You can create a well-written show. One of the shows that I've been watching recently is called The Residents. It's like a murder mystery with Uza Adoba from Orange is the New Black, and it's great. It also has Giancarlo Esposito, who was in Breaking Bad. I mean, these are the types of shows that are interesting to me. They have a plot, but maybe that's just me. What are your thoughts as we wrap up here?
Yeah. I would hope that this spurs more original content getting on Netflix. Like, hey, maybe we could be on Netflix one day. I just want it more to be educational and informative. Like, how come Earn Your Leisure don't have a Netflix deal? I mean, I already know why. How come all these are because they don't want, I don't mean to sound old school and conspiratorial, they don't want us having an informed, enlightened voice in mainstream platforms. That's just how I.
Right.
So I wish it well. I hope this does open the door where more educational or informative or inspiring or empowering content gets these type of deals on Netflix, Hulu, Tubi, or any other of these streamers. But we shall see, and we need to hold these streamers accountable, just like we want to keep holding MSNBC, CNN accountable. I think we need to drift away from that, and we need to start holding the execs at these streaming platforms accountable. They don't get a pass. I mean, they are held to the same standard as an NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. That's how I kind of felt with the whole Joy Reid situation. Yeah, we touched on that briefly, but reality is that cable TV or linear television is a dying breed. We need to focus our attentions more on these streaming platforms, on these internet platforms. So that's my thought on that as we wrap up.
Yeah, just in conclusion, we've got about a minute or so. Um, I think this is interesting when we look at it from the perspective of content creation, because this shows just the type of impact that content creation can have. I mean, I mentioned TikTok, but I think that Pop the Balloon or Red Balloon, whatever it's called, started on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but just to show that that has such an impact. We see clips on TikTok, we see clips on Twitter. We're now seeing that it's going to have a Netflix platform, and we have a big name host, and so that shows you the power of content creation. To your point, again, not to nerd out, but it would be great to have some more educational content, even content that touches on social topics. I think of it almost like a social blog, right, or a social magazine. Not a social magazine, but like a show like this where of course I'm biased, but where we're able to talk about these topics out loud, where we're able to see the other person, where we're maybe able even to share our screens, and we're able to receive comments from people in real time. This whole pop the balloon, this whole, like I said, finite, let's see what's gonna happen here. We're gonna talk about, relationships and sex and this and that. Okay, that might sound fun in the moment, but are people really going to tune in episode after episode after episode? I don't think so. I think there needs to be an added touch. So I'll wrap up by saying content creation, like almost everything we talk about here, has its benefits. It also has its downfalls. And as always, keep supporting your communities, keep speaking out for justice, and yeah, keep fighting.
Right, on that note, y'all have a great rest of your weekend and week, and we'll catch y'all on the other side. Peace.